What is up, guys? My name is MipZ and welcome back for yet another League of Legends video. So today we're doing something a little bit different. This is kind of a test and we'll see how it works out. I have had a lot of comments asking me to try and do some post-commentary games. So I thought we'll give it a shot. Today we are playing a very exciting champion, and that is Darius. So this champion has actually been suggested by quite a few people. So thank you guys. This is going to be pretty exciting. But first of all, let's just jump into this game. This is in no way 100% a perfect game, but it is a really nice game to showcase some different mechanics with Darius and how he just like overall works as a champion. This champion is a very fun one to play. We're gonna, as always, start off by talking about who this champion is for, how the abilities work, and then we're gonna go into the combos. It's gonna be a bit more advanced, and then how you can actually utilize different things on the map in order to really empower and yeah, just make your games really good. So this is overall a pretty good game. Throughout the end of it, you'll see that our CS is somewhere between 9 and 10 CS a minute, which is pretty close to what you want to strive for. This is not something that you will get very often, but whenever you do, you know, this is pretty good farm. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about this game. Or about this champion. So first of all, this champion is actually one of the champs that I would really recommend if you're a new player and you're like, I really want to play the top lane. Darius is a great champion to start out with. He has a lot of damage and his mechanics are fairly simple, yet there's enough depth to them to like actually improve from game to game. Like, Darius is not the champ that I've played the most, but when I was like kind of practicing for this video, etc., I was like, yo, I'm actually getting better at this champ game by game. Like, he's a lot of fun, and you can do so much with him. For you guys out there, I just want to separate and say, like, I would recommend this champ for anyone starting out the game, or if you're an experienced player who just kind of need a new champ in your roster, you really need to have Darius there. You can play this guy to super high rating. He's a lot of fun. He has a ton of damage, and you can actually really carry games with him. His ult and everything really allows that. But there are some players that I wouldn't recommend this for, and you gotta kind of self-reflect if this is you or not. And that is players who play defensively. Darius is a champ, in my opinion, he is created to be played aggressively. This means that you really gotta know how to zone your enemy, or at least not know, but you need to poke them as much as possible because he has a lot of damage. So if you are a very defensive player and just kind of like to hang back in lane and not pressure your enemies too much, then Darius is probably not the champ for you. But if you're an aggressive player or a semi-aggressive player, then this champ is honestly something you should have in your roster. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about his spells, and this is what kind of makes him really cool. His very first spell is called Hemorrhage, and Hemorrhage is, I don't know if that's pronounced correctly, I'm sorry if I destroyed the name, but what this thing does is that it allows Darius to put on a bleed effect onto any target that he hits with a basic attack or some of his spells. Both his Q and his W applies this bleed as well. But anyway, every time Darius uses his Q, his W, or a basic attack onto a champion, then they get a stack of bleed. This bleed deals a chunk of damage over 5 seconds. It's not like that huge, but it can actually get your kills from time to time, but there's a much greater reason why you want to get these bleeds onto your targets. Whenever you hit 5 stacks of bleed onto a champion, this is only on champions, then Darius gets what is called a Noxian might. And this is where Darius becomes absolutely insane. Because this Noxian might, what this thing can do is that it empowers Darius to get a lot of extra AD for a brief moment, and this AD can really empower your game and really turn fights around really rapidly. So you always want to go for these 5 stacks. Also, whenever you do get these 5 stacks, then when Noxian Might is up, then not only do you deal more damage, but any target you hit will get 5 stacks of bleed on them instantly. This means that looking at this, where if we had 5 stacks of bleed onto Poppy, and that way we get Noxian Might, then if their Echo or Seraph or whoever comes up into our lane and we hit them one time with a basic attack or a Q or a W, then they would get 5 stacks of bleed onto them, which is really, really insane. But yeah, that's kind of all that thing does. It's super cool. You really need to know this. And it also works together with your ult, but we'll get to that in a brief moment. Your next spell is called Decimate. And Decimate is honestly one of the coolest reasons why you want to play Darius. It's a very fun spell. It's basically this thing you're seeing in this game getting used all the time, where he basically whirls around with his axe, dealing a ton of damage. The thing with this spell is that, or this ability, is that the damage dealt really depends on where you hit. So if you hit with the blade of the axe, then you deal full damage. This is what you want to aim for. If you hit with the shaft of the axe, then you only deal about 35%. I don't remember if it's 30 or 35, but around 30% damage. So that means you literally do almost nothing. So you really want to hit it with the axe. Additionally, Darius heals whenever he hits with the blade. So if you hit a target with the blade, then Darius heals for 15% of his missing HP. And this stacks up to 45%, meaning that if you hit 3 champions, that is going to be the maximum amount of healing you can get from your Q. But yes, so as you can hear, you always want to try and hit with the blade, because if you do hit with the blade, then you're gonna deal a chunk of damage, and you're gonna be able to heal from any champion that you hit. But you only heal from champions or from big or large monsters. And the reason why I say monsters is there is a difference. For newer players, they probably don't know this, but monsters are things in the jungle. So that's what we see in here, and down here, like the Rift, the Baron, the Drake, the Golems, the red buff, the blue buff. All these things are monsters. These neutral monsters, they also, if you hit them with the blade, then they also heal Darius. This is something you really need to take into consideration, because it's actually pretty useful. It's something that you can really use if you're fighting in the jungle and you're in range of them. Then remember that if you're fighting 1 or 2 people, then you might be able to get that extra healing off just by also trying to hit the minion. Or as you guys are gonna see throughout this game, then I'm gonna utilize it in a different way that's gonna allow me to stay in lane and just in general have some more uptime. So far we're doing pretty fine in this game, as you guys can see. We're 75 CS versus 36, so Poppy is really struggling. We have our TP, so we're just going back in lane and we're doing really well. But yeah, our next spell, now that we've finished our Q, is our W, and our W is called Crippling Strike. And Crippling Strike is pretty self-explanatory. What this thing can do is that it slows your target, so whichever target you hit, it slows their movement speed, which is super cool. And also it deals a good chunk of damage. The thing with this one, with the Crippling Strike, is that it is an auto attack reset. This means that you always want to auto attack and then you want to pop it, because that way you can have 2 attacks right after each other, instead of if you just run in there, pop your W, then you'll only do 1 attack. So it resets your auto attack. It's super cool, and this is something you really want to think about. And there are different, we're gonna get more into the combos as we get there, but it's something that you need to know just for now. Additionally, a cool thing about the Crippling Strike is not only does it slow your target, deal a good chunk of damage, but if you kill a target with this spell, also minions for that matter, and this is very important, then it resets 50% of the cooldown, and it also gets all its mana refunded. This is very usable both for when you're farming in lane. If you don't need your Q to engage on an enemy, and you kind of like, yeah, just want to save farm, then you can use your W pretty often just to make sure that you hit your CS. This is one of the reasons why Darius also becomes a really new player friendly champion to play, because not only do you have your Q to farm with, you also have your W to just last hit things with, and that way it's pretty easy for you to hit everything. So yeah, that's all that Crippling Strike does. It's a super cool one. We'll get more into the combos. The third spell, Darius's E, is called, I don't remember the name, it's called Apprehend. And Apprehend is also a super nice spell. It is basically most of the time what you're going to be using for engaging and catching your enemies. It's a spell that's really, when you play against people, you really have to think about how to use. We'll get more into that as we get longer into the video and we're done explaining the spells. But what Apprehend does is that Darius takes his axe and he basically throws it out and grabs someone to him. Kind of think of it like a small blitzcrank grab, etc., but it grabs anything in its range. This is a super cool spell. It also slows the target. So actually what you can do is every time you grab somebody, then unless it's a champion with mobility, then it will give you enough mobility or enough slow on that target to be able to hit your Q with the blade instead of the shaft. Which is super cool. But we'll get, as I said, more into the combos. But it's a very simple spell. All it does is it grabs the target and slows them for a brief moment. And that is our E. Our last spell is, honestly, one of the most fun spells in all of League of Legends. I'm not even kidding you guys. This spell is freaking amazing. So this spell is called Noxian Guillotine. And that is his ult. What this thing can do is that Darius takes his freaking axe, he leaps into the air, smashing his axe down into the skull of his enemy, more or less. Maybe I'm emphasizing a little bit too much, but you know, he basically smashes his axe right into the skull of his enemies, dealing a huge chunk of damage. The thing is that this damage is based on the number of stacks of bleed. So as we talked about with the passive, it gives stacks of bleed and you can have a maximum of 5 stacks. And the way the ult works is that it has a base damage, which is not that significant, but for every stack of bleed on the target, Darius deals 20% more damage, meaning it can maximum deal up to 100% more damage, which is absolutely insane, especially because the damage dealt by this spell is dealt as true damage. For those of you who don't know what true damage is, then true damage is basically damage that fully ignores any armor or any magic resist that the target might have. As you might imagine, this is pretty insane because the only way to really counter this is by buying more HP, I guess, or for the enemy to get more HP. Because since you ignore their armor, then building armor is going to be more or less pointless versus that spell. So yeah, that's a pretty cool thing. So you always want to try and get as many stacks of the bleed onto your targets, such that you can they could deal max damage with your ult. And this is going to bring us kind of to where all the spells are going to come together into one freaking great unit, which is what makes this champion so much fun. So as you remember with the passive, then when we have these, or actually there's something I forgot to mention. We'll just take that real quick. I forgot to mention that every time you kill a target with your Noxian Guillotine, your ult, then your cooldown of your ult resets. It resets such that you can use the spell for 20 seconds and hereafter it's going to go on cooldown. So you can actually kill several targets in a row with your ult as long as the Noxian Guillotine deals the killing blow, then the cooldown resets and you have another 20 seconds left of it. Once it hits rank 3, then it's just going to be fully reset. There's going to be no 20 seconds and it'll be gone. It's just 20 seconds and yeah. Or it's just whenever you kill them, then it's going to be fully recharged. That's what I'm trying to say. So rank 1 and 2, 20 set. If you kill a target, it resets and you can use it for 20 seconds. Hereafter it goes on cooldown. And rank 3, it is just going to be fully reset whenever you kill somebody with that spell. So of course, if it's on cooldown, you kill something with your Q, it doesn't reset. It has to be the Noxian guillotine that deals the killing blow. Anyway, as I was just about to say before, this is kind of where everything comes together. So Darius, with his passive, as you guys remember, has this bleed effect, and when you reach the 5 stacks and get this Noxian Might, then Darius becomes empowered. And as we talked about, then every time Darius hits somebody while he has Noxian Might up, they automatically get 5 stacks of bleed onto them. This means that, imagine you're fighting someone, you get the 5 bleeds up, and you get the Noxian Might, and then you use your Q, then you hit everybody around you. All of them now have 5 stacks, and you can just use your ult and deal max damage on every single target, as long as you deal the killing blow every time with it. So this is something you really want to think about. If you guys look at what I did here in this fight, just particularly, then you saw that I used my ult pretty early. The reason for this is that the cooldown for these 20 seconds since the last kill was kind of lowering, meaning that either I could use it and it would go on cooldown, or I could not use it and it would still go on cooldown. So I just decided to deal whatever damage I could with the bleeds I had. Anyway, that is the overall of these spells, how they work together. So now let's talk a little bit about the primary combos. So there are different things with Darius you want to think about. First of all, Darius's combos as such is quite simple. What you usually want to do is you want to grab people to you. You do this with your Apprehend, your E, and every time you grab them, then you have this automatic slow. So what you can do is you can actually grab out attack once, and then you can do a run in front of them and do a W and a Q, and you can actually combine these two very closely together. So with a little bit of practice, then you can actually cancel the animation more or less from your W. This is super effective and a way to maximize your damage. So the ideal combo when grabbing somebody is that you want to use your E to grab somebody, pop your W or your E to grab them, auto attack once. Actually, just this fight is actually pretty fun if I remember correctly. This is pretty fun. This guy really regrets going here. And just the way that Darius can turn things around, like you can just see this. He's an absolute beast. At this point, we are also very fed. I have 180 farm at 18 minutes. So we are sitting at just around 10 CS a minute and 5 kills. So yeah, I'm just split pushing this game as much as I can. But the cool thing about Darius is also he is both a good team fighter, but he's also a really good split pusher. But we'll talk a little bit more strategy with him in just a moment. So yeah, as I was talking about with his combos, you generally speaking want to grab people in, auto attack once to get a bleed, then you want to click your W and Q, like you want to Q almost instantly after, but not such that you don't get the auto attack off or the auto attack from your W off. So you do grab, auto attack, W attack while queuing. And this way you're going to have 4 stacks up basically in a split second. This is going to be before your enemy can basically do much unless they really have some mobility. And this is going to set you off to basically win almost any fight from the get-go. He's a really strong laner, really strong 1v1 champ, and a really fun one. So this is your general combo. And yeah, of course, you always want to finish off with your ult and kind of think about when it's best to use it. Get it as many stacks up as possible. If you can, wait till you have 5 stacks of bleed, such that you get Noxian Might, and such that you deal maximum damage with your ult, since you have 5 stacks dealing 100% extra damage. Anyway, that is kind of the basics of it. Then there are other aspects of Darius, and this is kind of where your Apprehend really comes into play. You don't always just want to pop your or grab with your Apprehend straight away. If you can reach your target, or if he's scared of you, then holding on to it sometimes will force the enemy instead to kind of do other things. Like they're going to be forced to, they're thinking that you're going to grab, and that's just as dangerous as grabbing if you can get close to them. And this means that you can just hold on to your Apprehend to whenever they try to use some mobility away from you, to use a flash away from you or something else. So oftentimes kind of think about how your enemy reacts. Can you reach them without your Apprehend? Is it going to be dangerous for you? If not, then maybe hold on to it and just use it for whenever they're trying to get away or something like that. It can be really, really useful to really think about when to use the spell and when not to, because it is a super strong spell. All right, so all this aside, there are different things with Darius. In the laning phase, let's talk a bit about how you want to kind of play him throughout the game, the whole strategy of playing Darius. In the early game, you want to try and play as aggressive as possible. Of course, not to the extent where you're losing your lane. You don't want to mindlessly trade if you're losing, but do remember that you heal with your Q. So most commonly, you are going to out trade almost anybody, especially since Darius deals a heavy chunk of damage. Most people don't know. Most people, especially at lower ratings, don't know that the Darius gets this buff once he gets 5 stacks of bleed. So really take advantage of that fact, because people don't know. So make sure that, like, even though that you're a bit lower HP than whoever you're fighting, then pretty often, if people don't know what your passive does, then you are gonna win the fights at the end of it, because like this Noxian Might is really a big boost to Darius damage. And if you make sure that you get these healing in from your Q, this is very essential. So you always want to make sure that you hit your Q with the blade. So use your slows, use your E and your W to ensure that you do hit with the blade. That is very essential for playing Darius. But yeah, in the early game, play aggressive. Of course, try and ward up as much as possible, such that you don't get ganked, of course. But try to trade as much as you can and put as much pressure on the enemy champ as possible, because you do out trade most champions. As soon as you kind of have the upper hand in the game, then kind of do what I did here. I just zoned off Tabi, and for those of you who don't know what zoning means, it basically just meant that I showed, or I basically, Tabi knew for a fact, because I beat him up twice already, he knew that I was much stronger than he was. So what I did, I just stood still basically in lane for a bit. And, oh, this is so nice. I love this. Like, this is just like, you can just see how Darius is just a fun champ to play. Those dunks are just so fun. Anyway, what I did in laning phase was, once I established in front of Tabi that I am a lot stronger, I'm out farming him, I have more kills, then I just basically stopped the lane. I stopped out attacking minions, and I just started to only last hit them while standing in the way of Tabi, such that he couldn't last hit any of his minions. So he was just standing there looking at his minions die and not receiving any gold from it, while I was just getting richer and richer. So this is something you really want to think about. This is just a good example of me being too greedy because I thought it was fun. Anyway, that is really what you want to strive for. If you establish that you are stronger in the lane, then either, if you're very experienced with him and know how much you can push, and of course know where the enemy jungler is such that you don't get ganked, then of course you can kill under turret. It's very doable with Darius. But if you just want to play the safe side of it, then zone him off. Just show him that you're really controlling the lane, and that's really going to tilt people. Like, most people are going to get more tilted by getting zoned than getting killed more often or not, because it's really like, I'm gonna set this very straight for you guys. I've said it before, 14 creep score, 14 minions is more or less equal to 1 kill. So you can see here I have 236 farm versus Tabi on 106. This means that, like, approximately I'm at least 6 or 7 kills in front of him just from CS, on top of the extra 9 kills that I do have. So yeah, just really think about this. Every time you're 14 minions ahead, then that's equal to a kill. And yeah, as soon as you kind of make sure that you think about this, it's really going to help you win a lot more games. Anyway, as we were talking about, as you move into the mid to late game, then what you want to do with Darius, and this is also where it becomes a bit harder, this kind of counts with all champions, or all top laners, is you really have to evaluate when should you go help your team, when should you team fight, and when should you stay in the side lanes. And the thing is that since Darius is both a good split pusher and a good team fighter, then if you're doing well, then make sure that you just keep an eye where the enemy team is. If you have an eye on 4 to 5 people, then you're more or less allowed to push depending on the match, of course. But then split push, stay in the side lanes, and if there's an objective to fight over, like a Baron, a Drake, your team is pushing for a turret, then try and evaluate if you should go help them. Like, too often I see top laners just kind of leaving their lane to group up with their team to run around in circles around the river, and it actually does absolutely nothing. Like, you're not going to achieve anything. Still, think about 14 farm equals 1 kill. So if your ADC is taking all the farm, which he should, then if you're not achieving or working towards an objective, getting down a turret, getting down an inhibitor, getting or preparing a Baron or a Drake or something else, then move to the side lanes. Always think about how to optimize everything. One of the things I kind of missed to say throughout the game is that what you saw me do in the early game was also, I was pretty low on HP. At a point, I kind of missed it from talking to the camera, but I was in my own lane and I was pretty low on HP. So what I did was I went down here to the Rift Herald and I just went down there and I popped a Q on it and I ran away without taking any damage from it, without thinking about actually taking it. Of course, maybe I could have, but just going in there, using my Q on it allowed me to get 15% of my missing HP back, my missing health back, and that allowed me to stay in lane for longer. So really think about, you have all of these extra things around you that you can use. You can also use the Scuttle Crab. As far as I remember, it also counts as a large monster. So if that one's there and you need a little bit of HP and you've pushed your lane forward such that the enemy champ is standing on the turret, then just go up there, use your Q on it, run back, and you just got 15% of your HP back. It's really nice. You can use this very frequently. But yeah, in the late game, really do think about when you're working towards an objective and when you're just kind of on autopilot following your team. From time to time, you cannot avoid getting onto autopilot and following your team because it is a team game, but really do try and think about when it's worth it. This is one of the hardest things as a top laner, but Darius is just such a strong overall champion that you can use for more or less anything, and he's really fun. So really do think about it. In terms of summoners, in this game I ran Teleport. Ghost is also very used, probably more than Teleport. Personally, I like to run Teleport, but I am very aware that Ghost for a lot of people is better. But I like the TP. It gives me a bit more versatility in terms of getting fast back to lane. It allows me to keep an eye on losing lanes and teleport down there, or just help my team real quick. It allows me to make some split push plays that the enemy team might not expect because I have TP. But again, it's really a personal preference, and I do know that the majority of Darius players do run with Ghost. So try both out and see what works for you. I'm not going to say that running Teleport is better than Ghost or vice versa. In my opinion, it's a personal preference. For my playstyle particularly, I feel like Teleport works the best. For you, it might be completely different. So yeah. But yeah, as overall, just Darius is an extremely fun champ. And remember, as your team fighting, or as there are more players that you're fighting versus, then you always want to try and hit as many of them as you possibly can with your Q. Also, in the late game, you really want to try to keep an eye on your ADC. Pretty often you're gonna see me when I run into these team fights, I'm not just gonna grab somebody to me. I know that most commonly people are gonna try to reach my backline. So what I actually do is I try to W on them as they run past me, use my Q, and then as they're about to get out of my reach, then I grab them back to me. And I do this to peel for my backline. It is very important to try and protect your backline as much as possible. These guys deal a ton of damage. As a top laner, as a jungler, and as a support, it is a crucial part of your job to try, especially when you are in the front line. It is very, very important that you peel for your team or for your ADCs, because they're super squishy, but they're gonna help you win the fight. So with Darius, you might want to hold on to your E sometimes. Try and hit as many people as you can with it, and then follow up with a Q. But just overall, like, it's most things are fairly intuitive with him. It's just thinking about how do you keep the most people away from your team. How do you hit squishies? You always want to try and hit squishies, because you can melt them so quickly once you get the Noxian Might. Then hitting all the others, like the tanks, if they're pretty low, then you can, or below 20%, you can probably finish them with your ult. So it's a very, very cool thing since it does true damage. But I hope this was kind of an overall view of how to play Darius and kind of what you want to keep an eye out for. Darius is a very fun champion to play, and yeah, I hope it gave a good idea about how he works as a champ, who he's for, and just, yeah, kind of an all around. I know this was kind of a different style. Usually I play it live, so this is kind of a test. I had a lot of feedback, and some people really wanted me to do a post commentary, so we're just gonna try it here. So I would love to hear in the comments section what you guys think about this kind of style, if it worked better or worse, or if you have a completely other idea for something I should do, then I would love to hear from you. Personally, I really like the live commentary style, but I do know that it's a bit harder for me to commentate over it, and it also kind of decreases the overall gameplay. But I feel like it gives a more, like, a better impression of me as a person, and a fun entertainment factor. But I would love to hear what you guys think. But yeah, that is more or less going to be it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, if you learned a thing or two, or was just slightly entertained or something like that, then make sure to smash that like button down below. It really would help me out a lot. It's been so insane to see all the support we've gotten. I really do appreciate every single one of you guys. And yeah, if you're not already, then make sure to subscribe down below. Join our little small but very, very awesome community. If you feel like it, then you can also join as a member. Members do get different perks on Discord. They get priorities on comments, etc. I do try and respond to all comments, however, but I do prioritize members first. So yeah, if you really want to support my dream, and it's completely voluntary, whether or not this is something you want, then you can join it for a small subscription fee. But otherwise, yeah, just make sure that you subscribe to the channel. We got a lot of new stuff coming out very, very soon. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more from you guys. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, stay awesome, have fun, and take it easy, guys.